それではお待たせいたしました。まず、ACK トークスについてなんですけれども、2024年
This
ACK トー
year,
ク
ACK Talks will hold a program to examine art, society, and our own resilience from a variety of perspectives with the aim of enhancing conference functions and building a community centered on culture and the arts. In addition to the field of art, we have invited experts from various fields such as politics, economics, fashion, architecture, and food to present 9 sessions that cross a variety of fields, covering trends in the world art scene, the current state of the market, learning through art, and the connection between people. From here, we welcome Yusaku Imamura, Vice President of Tokyo University of Arts, and René Redzepi, founder and owner of Noma Restaurant in Copenhagen, and Chomwan Weeraworawit-Huang, a producer, curator, and creative director with roots in Thailand who has worked in fashion, film, and art, and Ahmed and Rashid bin Shabib, urban researchers and co-founders of Brownbook magazine, who are joining us online. And they will be joining us today for a talk titled Diversity of Art and Sustainability.
と題したトークをお送りいたします。では今村
So
さん
then, Imamura-san, please take it away. All right, thank you. So I'm going to start in Japanese, but since we have many foreigners here, is it okay if I guess you all have your translation devices. Okay. And also, I have lectures in the university, and normally I don't have this the classroom style. We usually have this like a group discussion rather than just a regular lecture. Anyhow, it almost looks like this university classroom right now. So it feels fresh to me because I usually don't do this format. Anyways, firstly, I wanted to talk about what I'm doing right now and what kind of questions I was giving these panelists beforehand in preparation. So first of all, big thanks to ACK for inviting me here. I am I'm happy to see that ACK is not confined to just the field of art, but you are also learning from a lot of different activities that are surrounding art. And the other day, or last night, I just got back from Thailand to Japan. And when I was in Thailand, I did also meet Chomwan-san in Bangkok. And the reason I am here today is because I am a course director of GAP, Global Art Practice. So there's this study in our university, GAP, and we talk about the nature and humans, the land and people, and then we think about not only as the information, but we also wanted to experience the relationship between nature and humans. And then why I visited Thailand is because in the Southeast Asia, we do talk about this a little bit, but in Chiang Mai, I saw Jenny-san, and then I'm sure they're exhibiting here today, but there are artists that are working with the local crafts in art, and then there is a lot of this cultural inheritance of the minority races. So we were able to do some field work with a lot of the different minority tribes and groups. And I think it's very important for us to be exposed to a diverse range of culture. And that's why, ever since I became the president of the Tokyo University of Arts, I've been focusing on this. Because artwork, we are still heavily focused on the Westerners' art world. But at the same time, we wanted to focus more on our neighbors who are Southeast Asian countries because we don't know anything about their daily lifestyle. So I have been traveling around these countries, and then there are some people like people in collectives in Indonesia, and then there are other institutions that we work together in mainland China as well. So earlier this year, I did go to Ahmed in together with our students, and I think we can start up this new project. There, we were talking about the clays and pottery, and then organic production of art. We talk about ecology and environment a lot, and then we have been working together with other universities in. So that is why I have been chosen as the moderator. And today we have René, Chomwan, and Ahmed today as a panelist. I wanted to hear what you have been doing. I'm really excited to hear your opinion on things. So then, let's get into the questions. So during our preparation meeting, I already did ask a few questions as homework. And one of the questions was, with your relationship with this Mother Earth and your artwork activities, what are you most interested in? What do you think is the most important? So that was the question. And also, why did you find interest in that topic was also a follow-up question. And then the third question was, as you all know, we have the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. By 2030, we have to finish some things, and we're only 6 years to that goal. But so I'm not sure if that is connected to our bright future to reach those SDGs goals or not. So I think in addition to SDGs, there are many ways we can live together with the nature in a symbiotic relationship. I think we need to discuss about what's important to create that kind of a future. So those are the 3 points I was asking people, and then I'd like to have some answers. Now, when we had this communication with speakers, I'd like to do this in English, all right?
My questions, I think I don't know, you shared it, but what are your most interested or concerned topic on the relation with the Earth in your activity? That's, my first question. The second question is, why and how did you become interested in these topics? And the third one is the SDGs are the target to be achieved by 2030. But the 2030 is just 6 years ahead, and the SDG is one of the goals which global community agree to accomplish. But what kind of action do you think that are the most important to save or sustain this Earth? So I like to ask, I've asked the 3 questions, but following this question, or maybe you don't need to follow this question, but
I think I can very easily answer all 3 with the most important thing is food. How we grow our food will determine everything. And if we can change how we grow our food, the world will be a lot better. And of course, besides how we grow our food has huge and tremendous impact on the climate. We all know this. What we eat has also a huge, important climate yielding problems. So what we eat makes us healthy, and the choices we do makes the planet healthy. It all comes down to food at the end of everything. And when I started out, we have a restaurant here. It was about serving guests and performing a craft. I never knew that I would fall in love with this idea that food is by far the most important thing. The problem is we value it, particularly in the West, where calories are flowing freely. And we have such a big surplus that we treat it as if it's trash. And for me, this is some of the biggest problems we have, and this is some of the biggest work that I want to do in the future, is help raise the value of how we perceive the stuff that we eat. Because it is, at the end of the day, it is the most important thing on Earth, is the food. It makes us healthy or unhealthy, and it makes the planet healthy or unhealthy. So it's as simple as that. And we attack this on many ways. One thing is to have a restaurant, but we have a TV show that's called Omnivore. where we try to enlighten people about the importance of food. We have a, maybe I can flick through this a little bit. This is the restaurant, this is the team. Let me show you here. This is some of the food. Let me see if I have the, so this is one of the projects that we have, which is, it's called Noma Projects. We have a series of stuff going on there, but it's all related to us opening our minds to what we eat, how we eat, with whom we eat as well, under the banner Try New Things. And we have all sorts of projects and products that we ship throughout the world. Strange things and not so strange things, all supposed to open your mind a little bit. Then we have our fermentation lab, which I think we're in Japan. Fermentation is at the very core of every Japanese flavor. Soy sauce, miso, a drink of sake. But we happen to believe that you can ferment your way out of anything, including food waste. The future is yeast, mold, and bacteria when it comes to eating and producing flavors, and making sure that the top of the leeks that we cut off, they can be transformed into something different that happens through fermentations. This is the entrance to our restaurant. This is the TV show. I mean, the entrance, it changes every 3 months. We change the entrance into something. The entrance has to be a portal. Today, the biggest problem when people experience things is that they don't have time. So when they walk into the restaurant, they're on their phone or they're filming. And when they eat, they film. They film each other. They film, you know, they're not actually there anymore. So we try to make these crazy portals so that people are like, whoa, where am I? I actually need to be here now. So anyway, and then the final thing we've done is this TV show, 8 ingredients through which we explore something about humanity, something about the world, told through 8 ingredients. Tuna is one of them, chile, corn, salt, coffee, and so on and so forth. So, long question, long answer, food, for me, is the most important thing.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. And also, you know, at the time, first of all, you know, I learned noma. I mean, you know, I learned that noma is quite prestigious, like restaurants, like, you know, #1 within 50, 3 Michelin stars, you know, just a very, I used to know just like a superficial like information. But I started getting know about your activities. I was so shocked and surprised that, you know, why I didn't know that, you know, before. You know, I learned a lot through, you know, the books you gave me and also your film. But also at the same time, I got a question about, do you also start to sharing your knowledge or like skill to the kids? Is it important for you?
Yeah.
Actually, you know, actually I had so many kind of friends of macrobiotic. Like macrobiotic, like, you know, the parents are crazy about macrobiotic diet. But the kids, like, suddenly, you know, when they are like young, like up to 10, you know, they follow the like direction of the parents. But after 10, okay, they start to go to McDonald's and Coca-Cola, and, you know, they go because of like, it's fast, fancy, fashionable, everybody eats. You know, if they, you know, even my son, actually, he used to eat brown rice, you know, at the obento box. He brought obento box brown. At the time of the like first impression of you know, his classmates, why your rice is brown? It's like it's kind of like he is kind of like a difficulty to get along with other kids. So then, how do you think about like nurturing or like give them an opportunity for the kids to understand how important like the food is, not only adults?
I mean, there's no doubt you're right. I have 3 children myself, I'm actually shocked to hear that that you can control your kids until they're 10. There's no, we can't do that. Now my kids are a little older than that, but I would say it's actually the opposite. After 10, they started listening more, and after 15, they started listening even more. So the kids, of course, we have a chance to influence children dramatically. In our part of the world, it's very, very, very difficult because there are some heavy machinery, government machinery, in how you teach kids. Because if you could change the schooling slightly to incorporate more learning, more natural sciences actually in nature, that would be tremendous. We had a program that we tried to implement into the Danish school system. It's called Wild Food.
Oh, nice.
There's actually an app, so if you happen to come to Denmark, you can download the app. It's called Wild Food, and it's an app, and it shows you. You can say, okay, I'm in the city. What's in season, and how do you harvest it, and how do you eat it as well? So it's supposed to guide you to be a forager. Being a forager is knowing seasonality, is knowing what's edible in the wilderness. So our thought was, if we make all the Danish children foragers, they fall in love with nature from the beginning. And if you're in love with something, you take care of it. But yeah, there was just too many problems in sort of the political school system. So it ended up being an app, but it was actually guided towards that every single child in Denmark should be a forager.
Nice, yeah.
I think in Japanese you call it a matagis, no?
Matagi, yeah.
Matagi.
Actually, I, also these days I'm thinking about also, our, like a modern society is actually based on like farming, kind of like agricultural like industry, right? But like you said, like a matagi or like a people like picking, the like edible things from the forest. But also our like ancestors did that. It's kind of like how can we combine these like farming culture and also like you said like a matagi kind of culture.
For me, it's about a detachment. We're detached from it.
Yeah.
We don't know what's the rhythms and the flows.
Right.
And that detachment is creating so many problems for our health and also many planetary issues. I truly believe if you're in love with something, you take care of it.
Yeah.
And we are afraid of nature. We're afraid of going into a forest. We don't understand it anymore.
Yeah, thank you very much. And then also one of the reasons like you moved also the restaurant into the look like a forestry area.
Yeah, I mean, we have been open 21 years, and 8 years ago we moved our restaurant from the center of Copenhagen to, it's still in Copenhagen, but it is kind of surrounded by, this is actually in Copenhagen.
Okay.
It looks like it's in the middle of nowhere, but on the other side of this lake, there's a big modern building. Yeah, but we wanted to have a sort of like a little ecosystem. So the gardens around us, they are perennial gardens. We never take up the roots. We never till the soil. We have this wild forest around us. So we wanted to have like an eco zone to grow from. And then we grow a lot of herbs as well for ourselves in the city.
Wow. Fantastic, kind of paradise, for...
It's actually, we're very lucky because the practicalities of being out of the city is very difficult in a small place like Copenhagen because of where do your staff live and so on and so forth.
Kind of certain distance, right?
Yeah, it becomes hard.
Yeah.
Here we have almost best of both worlds.
Nice. Yeah, thank you very much. And then also the food is, of course, really connected to, as you mentioned, really the daily life, right? SDGs sometimes like quite like a political agenda or like an industry agenda. The people need to move on is maybe the like a daily practice is, I think, very important to accomplish our goal. Yeah.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
I feel like I know that the easiest and most effective way you can participate in helping those goals become a reality is change what you eat next meal, and then you are participating.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Okay, I'd like to pass the microphone to Chomwan. Chomwan is a kind of a, the creative director, producer, and advisor for cultural activities, and she does a lot of things, but also she works with Indigo. Actually, in Bangkok, I joined her workshop with her partner, Philip. It was really amazing, because Indigo is quite, the popular for us, right? So then in Japanese, but also the kind of Thai Indigo is a little bit different. But of course, each location has a different Indigos. You mentioned about that. But also your activity of Indigo is also give us maybe a new perspective or alternative perspective. At the same time, also I really want to know why you interested in, or why you started the concerns about this. Yeah.
Hello? Okay. So thanks for having me here. It's really pretty surreal to be talking about indigo or aizome in Kyoto. Basically, as Imamura introduced me, as I do a few different things, but why I'm here, I'm actually a lawyer by training, and my specialization was intellectual property. My PhD thesis was intellectual property and the textiles industry in developing countries. So if René is about food, for me, textiles and clothing, what we wear, we're all sitting here clothed, it's extremely important. I think it's something which is often sometimes trivialized as fashion, but it's really very much the basis of how we deal with each other, of civilization, what we wear, clothing, how we make clothing. So if what we put into our bodies is the act of eating, and we love eating, how we clothe ourselves, not just on an aesthetic level, but what it is that we're wearing, I think, is something that Philip and I think about all the time. So this goes back to when I did my PhD, but I've kind of had a meandering course of things that I've done. I work with artists often. I started off working with filmmakers. My legal career only lasted a year, but my academic legal career, I use it all the time. And in the work that we do today with artisans, it's a real, it's like a through line. And what you see here is, this is our original indigo grandma. So Philip and I went to Sakonnakhon 8 years ago. We took a road trip. It's a 13-hour drive from Bangkok, because we were told there's lots of indigo. What does that mean? In Thai, indigo is kram, and we've had it for multiple generations. But unlike in Japan, it wasn't celebrated. It was seen as something that was other, that was far away. And as Bangkokians, the farm, when I was younger, is not what it is today. It's not something that's celebrated. So there's this sort of this nuance, these layers of, you hear of Thai silk, but people don't tell you that those colors, the really vivid colors, they are synthetics. And they were introduced to us by an American man in 1945, and he is the king of Thai silk. So this is something that's really interesting. It's an amazing brand. I love it. But that's something to remember, that prior to 1945, there were no synthetic dyes. Not at the level which you kind of have today. Anyway, so this is our first indigo grandmother. Her name is Masa'ad. She is a master weaver. And if you think about weaving itself is an abstraction. So when these ladies weave, you can't really see, I don't think she's wearing a patterned shirt, but ikat, which exists for many of our civilizations, of our societies, where people still make, where they still weave, it's an abstraction of reality. Weaving is weft and warp, and they weave what they see. So this is Philip and I. We took our road trip 8 years ago. So when you moved to the farm, René, I guess we started our company. This is indigo. In Japan, it's a buckwheat variety. There's over 200 species of indigo that exists in the world. In Thailand, our indigo is a legume. It's a pea, so it's in a pod. And in the north of Thailand, it's a kale, which is also different. So indigo only exists through human intervention. The color blue, as we know it, unlike butterfly peas or, I don't know, blueberries, it doesn't exist in nature. It requires a double fermentation process to get to the color blue that you see all over Tokyo and what I'm wearing. The first sort of indigo fragments or textiles that were found were in a river basin in Peru, tracked back to 6,000 years ago. So this indigo, I mean, it's powerful. It's been with us for 6,000 years. And unlike a lot of other activities we do as human beings that could be destructive, this is something that shows that we're able to make something that's long-lasting, that's got, not just beauty, but it also has anti-UV protection, it's antibacterial, and all this stuff. So it's magical. So 2 different types we use in Thailand. So Indigofera tinctoria, Indigofera fructicosa, and we share these species with the rest of Southeast Asia and also India. These are some of the grandmas we work with. This is another village called Nont Gai. If you Google them, you'll see that there's been a lot of work, a lot of collaboration with Vogue Thailand, with a lot of other designers. They are, in a way, a model for how this idea of an artisanal future could exist. So unlike in Japan and in India, ours are very much cottage industries still. And we're finding a way where this model can create, I don't want to even just, it's not just like survival. It has to thrive. And it has to be something which our children, their children, they have to think it's cool, because if not, who is it for? So I think for us, for Philip and I with our friends, and I say our friends, we exist because we have a wonderful community of friends, of collaborators, and we often talk about this idea of an artisanal future. And what does that mean? What does the artisanal mean? I mean, in our first discussion, René was saying, artisanal just is expensive, right? But like food that's organic, that's foraged is expensive. But why? And that question comes to perhaps, it's a big question, it's the elephant in the room of the systems that exist that maybe don't let us see what's already there if we look a little bit harder and spend a little bit of time. So this is what we make, so this is the clothing, but it started with blue, but all of these colors are natural. They're from plants. Whether it's hot dye or whether it's mud. So mud is the oldest of dyes. You take the earth, you take dirt, you soak it in water and you strain it. And it gives you, depending on the terroir, depending on where you are, like a beautiful beige or brown or gray. And if you see on the right, that's the palette that we have right now. And what you see here, on my left are, when I say a community, we wouldn't exist, but for our friends and family. And we see ourselves as less a fashion brand than we do as a vehicle for collaboration, as an enzyme, as a catalyst. I think it's really important for people to see that another version of things can exist. We exist today, I think, because of our socks over COVID. We started making socks because in Thailand in the 70s, we became a big factory to the world. And socks was what we made. So we started working with a Thai socks company that are amazing. Our socks it's rubber and cotton, and it dyes really well. And it was what enabled our aunties, our ladies, to start working with their sons and their daughters who didn't necessarily feel connected to the sarongs that they were weaving. But it also enabled us to relaunch the brand in Paris. We made a film. The film's a 12-minute documentary. We take for granted, maybe it's the same in Kyoto, this is a natural dye. What does that mean? Again, what is a natural dye? The way that René said, foraging, maybe people think foraging's cool, but what is foraging? So that's what we do. When I say collaboration, this is one of the activities that we do. So again, platform. We work with this festival in Thailand called Wonderfruit. It hosts now, I think last year was 30,000 people, and we have this tent. It's called Indigo World. And last year we hosted 700 people over 4 days to dye indigo. It's a really generous process. The festival support it, and it's something, you know, you come out with your hands blue, and you transform your clothes. You give it another life. And it's sort of this activity that we have, and we started collaborating with artists. We collaborate often with the artist Rikrit Tiravanija. He's like our good friend. He's a big brother. He cooks. He does everything. But last year we did this phrase, "Do we dream under the same sky?" It was first launched at Art Basel in 2016 with food. I wouldn't call it a performance, but he feeds a lot of people. And here we did a picnic with the Finnish chef Anto Milesniemi, and it was part of it's a project which I'm actually working on also, the Bastard Cookbook, that looks at the evolution of food. And in this case in particular, we worked with an urban refugee program called Na Projects, because you know, when people have to leave or flee, what do they take with them if not their recipes? So this is kind of a conversation that we have often. We also made a vow never to feed anyone badly. It's really important because when we work with our grandmas, they feed us so well, and everything is foraged. So that's kind of part of our thing. This is the collaboration with Rikrit. So the Rikrit jacket is a workwear jacket. Rikrit gave us a Japanese workwear jacket that he wanted to be made in blue, in indigo blue, our indigo. But you know, the workwear jacket is French, the bleu de travail, but the workwear jacket was never made with natural indigo. It was actually a Japanese interpretation of the bleu de travail that gave it an artisanal touch. So we really appreciate these. I don't think the conversations between us and Japanese artisans exist yet, but we would really love it too, because we think that the models that Japan have been exploring for the past 4 decades is something which we could really do more of in Southeast Asia and also in India, and you know, there's where people make things. This is a collaboration with another artist, Udomsak and Ahmed. We made a print together, so we use digital printing as a way to archive, and it also enables us to be able to explore other ways of expression, but you know, yeah, it's just, you know, like again, platform. Oh, and this is our most recent collaboration. So this is my husband, Philip, who before he became a dyer is a model and is still a model. And we worked with this Vietnamese American designer who showed in Paris. Sorry, everyone's giggling. It's at the Musée Guimet. And I think this was also an important statement for Peter, because, you know, as a Vietnamese American, showing for the first time in Paris fabrics that were dyed in the northeast of Thailand of earth and wood and fire. What does this mean? You know, so Philip opened the finale section of the show, and there he is in fabrics that we made with our artisans from Pakampu village in Sakonakan. And that's just me, because I wanted to do this just to, you know, there's Philip Huang, but there's also what I do, which kind of feeds into Philip Huang. And when we think of symbiosis and things flowing back and forth, yes, I'm a lawyer, but that's the through line, perhaps. I think it's about community and collaboration. So I put this here because I've realized that everything that I've done today somehow goes back to this moment in 2012, where I founded a film festival with Apishat Pongweerasektakun and Tilda Swinton. And I say this because this has just taken time. You know, all of these things today, whether it's indigo dyeing or these collaborations, it all started from this idea that some friends of mine and I had that everyone should come to Thailand, but not to sit on the beach. And that's a big statement, you know, not to sit on the beach, but to actually make things together. You know, back then, there isn't the scene there is now today. So to make anything happen, you kind of have to make it, and we built this. So this is the Archipelago Cinema, which was designed by the architect Ole Sharon, and it was built by fishermen. So a lot of people think this is a luxury project worth like millions of dollars. It wasn't, because it was local lobster platforms, like shrimp, lobster fishing platforms, brought together and then, you know, taken out to this bay. And for one night, we screened films under the theme of songs from the bottom of the ocean. It was very beautiful. Done to a live soundtrack. We showed Peter Pan from 1907, courtesy of the British film Institute, and it was with a live soundtrack by Simon Fisher Turner. So this is very much like again, it's time, you know. We worked with the community, it was about film. So if there's food and clothing, then there's also film and there's architecture. And there's these worlds that we exist in together, and there's moments as community we come together. So I put this here because Tilda, the conversation might have started 12 years ago, but you know, we've had these champions who've been able to talk about ikat, things made by hand, indigo dye. And you know, she's a Chanel ambassador, but she wears Philip Huang, and she wears this ikat. And to wear this in Thailand was so powerful for young people to see that Tilda Swinton wears Thai ikat in a talk to a very large room filled with people talking about cinema. So this was the memoria. So this is also part of what I do. I make projects happen in the absence of often public funding. We don't have much public funding in Thailand, so this was the premiere of a film that Apichatpong made that Tilda starred in, and this was the Thai premiere. So it's worth noting that he often wears the color blue, it's ours, but we share the same region. So Apichatpong Pichai makes films in Isan. Isan is the northeast of Thailand, that's also where we work. Another such collaboration is with the artist Tom Sachs. So I co-curated the last Bangkok Art Biennale, and Tom and I built a boat together. This boat is a secondhand boat we acquired from the south of Thailand because Tom came to Thailand for the first time also 12 years ago for our film festival. But you see, we made like a uniform for him, which is a NASA gray. But that NASA gray is from a hot dye made of ebony berries. And then this is just, you know, art stuff because we're at an art fair. And I just wanted to end with this. So again, everything that we've talked about, why we're here, you know, Imamura asked, like, what is it that I'm interested in? I'm interested in the clothing and the colors and the pursuit of color. But I actually most of the time really like people. And I like getting people together in a room because I think that's the most important. When you talk about SDGs, there's a lot of them, but there's a bunch of them that talk also not just about the animate living things that we can't talk to, but the living things that we can communicate with, and that's our community, our communities. And I really love being able to create these moments. We call it the relational, but the relational is, you know, what René just said. It's who you're eating with. It's what conversations you're having, and you know, you don't really know what's going to happen afterwards, but I love those moments when we, you know, with Jam, for example, I'm going to end with that, but we hosted a party in Venice. It was for 100 people, but actually it became for 400 people, and we closed down the street. And what is that power, if not a lot of people in a really large room or in a street together, being able to talk about things?
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Actually, we Japanese has to mention about the kind of what the world is we call ishokuju. It's clothing and food and living, you know, kind of architecture or building. These three elements are kind of represent our world. But today, actually, food and clothes, and also the next is Ahmed will talk about, he will talk about also the architecture. But at the same time, you know, quite similar to both of you, like, you know, I was thinking about when I was listening to your sharing, actually, there used to be kind of like a periphery things, like not in the center. It's like coming back to the center. Very, very important. But how we connect these things, and also how we also connect it to daily life. This is very important, as like René mentioned, as, you know, kind of like, you know, our action need to be in our daily life. No, so this is very important, like food and clothes, and also how impressive, like you're connecting like international scene and also like Nakhon, you know, Sakon Nakhon, like local area of Thailand, how you connect it. And also Thailand has also just 2 days ago, I had a wonderful food, like a fermented pork, meat and grilled in banana leaf. It's actually the Isan and also Myanmar, like a mountain tribe is, kind of their characteristic food is kind of like a raw fermented pork. But, in a modern era, people think that it's kind of dangerous food.
I have to say this because of this Thai fermented pork sausage.
Yeah.
We tried it with wild boar here in Kyoto.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice.
And it works well.
I want to try someday. Yeah. We didn't talk much about the fermentation, but maybe later. So then also, I would like to ask Ahmed to share his activity. So also, again, the same, like, his activity in the Middle East, of course, after 9/11 or many issues about like Arab and Middle East, he started the Brownbook, the magazine, to show us or share us how the like culture of Middle East, this is quite an amazing like achievement, So then like 1 million sellers and numbers of books, many years. He's like a pioneer to share us about the like how kind of cultural heritage at the time, also the people in diaspora, to contribute it of the cultural activity in our society. Then he's working on architecture. He's a PhD candidate for the Oxford, at the Oxford University, and he's MSc at Oxford. And he's doing an amazing project in also the next Venice Biennial. So Ahmed, tell us about your activity, also you and Rashid. Oh, seems like muted.
Yeah. Okay. Can you? Is this good? Can I?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much for that wonderful introduction, Imamura-san. It's high praises. I'm incredibly excited to be here. I wish I was there physically, and I will be in Japan relatively soon. Let me echo, René's earlier point, and then I can jump into the presentation. I was thinking about this a couple of days ago when I was looking at pictures of people in the 80s. And there's something really interesting about pre-internet faces. If you look at faces of people before the discovery of the internet and photographs, they're looking always, upwards. And I feel like ever since the discovery of the iPhone and the kind of discovery of the internet, we've kind of become, really inverted. And I think because of this, you just really do this exercise. Look at people's faces, pre-internet in photographs. And I think the problem is, and the shift is, as René was saying, when people enter, his restaurant, is that people are taking pictures all the time. And I think we've shifted from a species of curiosity to a species of excitement. And I think the difference between curiosity and excitement is time. Because curiosity is about taking the time to discover something, building on it, share it, collaborate. Whereas excitement's about the immediate, it's about the present, it's about satisfaction. Mike, who's in the audience, him and I have these conversations regularly. Imamura, you and I have had these conversations around the fireplace for the last, 10 years together in Dubai and all over. And I think I'll just make one quick point before I jump into the presentation. And it is the question of what is the difference between culture, tradition, customs, and rituals. And I think the reason why I enjoy spending time in Japan is because I find that the collective nature of Japanese society really echoes what we experience in daily life in the Arab world. And more specifically, I think the idea of living rituals. Because, although, if you look at it as a pyramid and what sits in the bottom is culture, culture is reflected through tradition. Tradition is manifested through customs, and then customs are realized through rituals. And I think one of the major problems, and the reason why I say curiosity, excitement, pre-internet phone, is we've really lost the connection between us and ourselves. I think there's a major disconnect, and we experience it probably regularly when we're either on our phone and you look at yourself and you're like, what? How long have I been? Why am I on this page? Or you're heading to a particular place and you're like, why is this scheduled? And I think there is some intrinsic disconnection between us as a vessel, as a conduit of a metaphysical, into the physical. But that being said, I think we are curious folks. Both my brother and I have a twin brother. We are we are foragers, but I think a different kind. And I think our foraging is based on curiosity. So if I can just, let's do it like this. Let me share my screen. And then, I think you've muted me, so I can't hear anything, but can you see the screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. This is the Arabian Peninsula. I'm the blue dot. But I mean, we live in an incredible geography that is really ancient, ancient with lots of things. But I just want to go and tell you what we're exploring at the moment. And if you look at the ocean on this side and the ocean on this side, what actually happens is water runs right through here. And if you start to look at the patterns on the landscape, you can really see where water landmarks are going in. And we were particularly interested because every time we go to the desert, we find salt. And the salt, I'll explain more, is used. But if you zoom into this desert here, this is all salt flats. And we were completely fascinated by this landscape. And each one is almost 1 kilometer wide. So what I'll do is, I think what I'd like to do is present about this, which is what you're looking at here. Can you still see?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, great. So I won't take too long, but this is a curious investigation. And that is what we're looking at is in the desert, but what it's called typically is a sabkha. And sabkha means salt flat, but it's not exclusive to the Middle East. It's not exclusive to the Arabian Peninsula, but it exists in Latin America and places like Chile. It exists in places throughout Asia. But simultaneously, the reason why sabkhas are important is they're like Arctic ice, right? The more they disappear, the more they give you indicators of climate change. But more specifically, they're being mined for lithium in phones. Each one of you most likely has a piece of salt flat in their pocket, all of you now in the audience, that is probably in your phones and in your batteries. So you know, this is not necessarily something that is super rare, but it's being mined throughout the world. You know, us as human beings, we're mining them. We've been publishing a magazine for the last 18 years, talks about contemporary Middle Eastern culture, and more specifically the diasporic community. And we then explore that into different elements, housing. You know, we work with, you know, we do publications with people like Ram, Cool House, and sometimes we, you know, we make things. This building is a question. The question is architecture only for people? And we did this in Le Domaine de Babochet in Poitiers. And the idea is we built a pigeon house, a bird house, as people who are building something with nature as being the recipient of design. But also, we're missing enchantment somehow in our daily lives. And I think we're missing mysticism and the idea that there are bigger questions than answers. And I think we like to find these questions in nature. And this is a water channel. It's called Falaj, that runs throughout the city, where we examined it and presented it through palm trees as stools, and why water is such a intrinsic part of our society. And if you look at Dubai's, everyone thinks of, Dubai, where I'm from, Middle Eastern cities, particularly across the Gulf, like Qatar, Abu Dhabi, Bahrain, Kuwait. We always think of these cities as in the desert, but actually they're not. They're maritime cities like Venice. They're ocean facing. And the reason why that is because of the salt that exists within the ground. And we conducted this research, published this publication called The Anatomy of Sabkhas, and I'll breeze through this as quickly as I possibly can, to ask two types of questions, dialogical and dialectic. A dialogical question is attempting to ask questions that opens up to further questions we don't have answers to. And dialectical is attempting to look at how we can find answers by being curious about the natural environment and our relationship with it. And so in the very beginning, we asked ourselves, what are these phenomena that exist around us, these salt flats? And us as human beings were attempting, this is, when we zoomed into one of the salt flats, this is the scale of it. This is the scale of the structure that is being built on it. But also at the same time, these salt flats give rise to mangroves. And mangroves, this is all research we put in the publication. Why are mangroves important? Mangroves are wonderful species because they exist around salt flats and around the ocean. And because they have to basically translate salt water into fresh water by desalinating it, it consumes more energy, therefore sequestering more carbon. So 1 square kilometer of mangrove is the equivalent of 4 square kilometers of regular forestry. So there's this whole narrative around COP of planting mangroves. And if you go deep into these salt flats, they're being, carved. We're always attempting to control nature somehow. We're attempting to play with nature. we're attempting to use it for construction material. This is in either Naoshima or Inojima, I'm not really sure. But it's used, the salt is mined in this way by sticking them. And if you look at this map, these are all mangroves. It's incredible. I mean, look at this really beautiful phenomenon. And right in the middle of it, I don't know if you can see this kind of almost like the shape in the middle. That's Abu Dhabi, a city that exists between nature. And this is us in one of these salt flats. The salt flat is not, the desert is not dead. Of course, all of you know this. It's alive with these beautiful, species. And we went to Kew Gardens in London, and over there they've basically documented every single species in the mangroves. And the interesting thing in the mangroves is that we have, Dubai is famous, Dubai has flamingos, but it's not famous for flamingos. But one of the things that Dubai has, which I really encourage you to go and see when you're here, is flamingos that fly from Siberia to Africa, stop in Dubai at the mangroves. And it's incredible. And so this is Wilfred, and then now, I'm still talking about how the nature of mangroves. This is Wilfred Thesiger, who really explored and cartographed the empty quarter, the desert, which I showed you images of. He was the first person to have mapped it. And then we shift from salt as a natural phenomenon to salt in architecture. So this is Siwa. It's where Cleopatra, the historical story of Cleopatra bathing. And it's the oldest salt city where they built, it's, over 2,000 years old. The first major urban plan was built around a salt factory in South Deban. And it was the place where major architecture was born. This is Leduc, who did this master plan. And there's this really great publication that talks about the influence of Leduc with Le Corbusier. So the idea that salt funded experimental architecture, and experimental architecture through salt influenced Le Corbusier, which gave birth to a lot of the modernist movement. And this is Mies van der Rohe's 1930s exhibition, where he tested 3 types of construction material. One of them is looking at salt, and the other one was charcoal. And then we get into salt glazed, Philip Johnson's exploration. So we're looking at how salt is being used in building. Kurokawa was famously known to do a lot of experimental structures. This is in Libya, where the blocks were used by earth from the ground, and the reason why the buildings lasted in quite a modern sense is that the composite had salt element that crystallized over time, giving more structure. And these are more experimentations. Cedric Price, who is very known to have done the Fun Island. Oscar Niemeyer's testing around architecture. Of course, Jean-Claude and Christo's only permanent proposal. I don't know if anyone had gone to their exhibition in 2021, but their only permanent exhibition installation was in one of those salt flats. And then finally, I'll end at this slide, is our obsession with Mars. And if you look on the right, that is sunrise in Mars. And on the left, it's the rover exploring Mars. And the reason why we're obsessed with Mars is because we're looking for life, and life is seen through water. And water, artifactually and archaeologically, is found through salt flats. And if you look for salt flats on Mars, you find it there. So I think I'll end on that note. That's okay, and then leave it. I hope that was.
Thank you, Ahmed. You know, I didn't expect that you talking about the salt. You know, of course, you know,
Yeah.
that we're thinking about the desert or sand, but you talked about the salt. But of course, kind of like ancient era, like maybe the bigger time span. Of course, you know, you have salt in a terrain. But also they're related to all of you, and also Chomwan didn't talk about much about the muds, dying. And then I think soil or like ground earth itself is, I think, a very important issues. During the like COVID time, we didn't go anywhere, like 2020 to 2023, like we're stuck in our house. But many people started to, interested in gardening, and people started grow something, and people started to interested in the soil or ground. I really think that's a quite interesting, the phenomena at the time, because we need to be, somewhere, like stayed, right? It's like a slowness give us like a perspective, or like really rooted where we are stands, or like where we live in. I think René also, working in Copenhagen and also the Kyoto, and also the maybe somewhere else, like, in cooking, maybe, I don't know, you mentioned about in this book, but not, but how do you think about the like earth, soil, ground itself, the differences, or like, of course, you cook, or like you make food from the harvest, but also how do you see the soil?
How do I see soil? Well, I think Noma or any restaurant could be called the weather restaurant. Like, what we do is completely and 100% dependent on weather. I mean, everything is. Today, the Shinkansen is delayed because of rain, I guess. And, so there's this thing that the soil gives us our flavors. It gives us our work. And beyond that, of course, the quality of the soil, what nutrition is in the soil, gives us our health. And in the soil, there is a huge network of collaborations happening. Fungi are working with each other to distribute nutrients, root systems, bugs, and so on. There's a giant network beneath us. And unfortunately, we know already now that over the course of the last 100 years, and this is one of the most boring things about food, nobody cares and wants to talk about it, is nutrition. It's super boring. How much nutrition do you get from a carrot versus a carrot from a healthy soil? They might taste the same, but if you eat it in a lifetime, it will be quite different to you. And the reality is soil is being depleted. We are messing up our soil through how we're growing. And soil is just the most important thing for the nutrition. So we think about this constantly. What sort of systems are we supporting when we order our food? Are they organic? Are they biodynamic? Are they permaculture? Are they regenerative farming? There's all these ways or philosophies of growing food, and they all matter tremendously. One of the things that we know now that seems to be very important is don't mess up the soil. Like the plow has been one of the most biggest invention in human history because it gave us agriculture. But we also know that every time you plow the soil, you're also messing up the whole systems that lies beneath us. So the shift towards these type of practices is not something that's happening tomorrow, but we need to think of this for the quality of our soil, no doubt about it. It will be hugely costly. And you talked about the cost of things. hand dyeing, artisanal, craft, organic, things that are good for us, good for Earth. They're more expensive. Why is that? Why does everyone that wants to work like this get punished on price and cost? It's just not right, you know. But of course, the change of that, we are far from it. And it will be painful and very costly to change it. But of course, it's possible.
So also, maybe you learned, also you spent so many years in Japan. Also, did you learn something very specific about soil or earth, you know, when you visited? You know,
in
here?
Japan,
Yeah.
in Japan, you learn how to be very, very, soil is not everywhere. Where we are in Europe, it's completely flat. 98% of the country is agricultural soil. There are no more forests. We have no mountains. Here you have forests and mountains, and you have little soil. So what you have is really, really, really well structured and organized, and you get the best out of it. So the way Japanese gardens are optimized and perfected is really, really incredible to watch. And I mean, I've been everywhere in Japan, from north to south to east to west, and everywhere is just so practical and so structured. Whereas I think in our part of the world, where we have quite a bit of agricultural soil for 5 million people, we perhaps overuse or don't consider it as much, perhaps.
Yeah, thank you very much. And Chomwan, you know, can you tell us a bit about also the relationship with your like dyeing or textile with soil and?
So,
Yeah.
in Thailand, soil is everything. I think that goes without saying for most places, but I think we come from a region of the world where there's still such abundance, but such abundance that we take it a little bit for granted. You put something in the soil and it grows. I think it's really important. This is where the art part comes in. This is where delicious food comes in. This is where, to a certain extent, aesthetics comes in. How do you explain to someone the quality of soil? Like, how do you explain to someone whether something which is dyed with your hands and the earth, why is it better than something in a luxury store that's made with like every version of synthetic, everything? Not that that's bad. What does it take? Like, what I think is really important is, for us, you know, we're able to show soil quality through the colors of the clothing that we make. Specifically, you know, growing up in Bangkok, you were taught that red soil, red earth is really bad. Nothing grows in red earth. That's because the images that we were shown when we were little was always these regions when there was drought. But actually, you know, Isan is the most fertile area of the country. Everything grows. There's like 2,000 different species of rice that exists within this sort of cradle. So what it says to me is a lot of it is misrepresentation and information that we have to question. And I think this is possible through art, through fashion, through food, through architecture, because otherwise, I don't think it's that fun. If we were to have this panel discussion about the nutritious qualities of like this carrot versus the other, and if I were to sit and tell you about what pH level indigo needs to thrive, I think it would be less interesting. So I think it's really important where these conversations exist, like your TV show. I mean, I learned most about soil watching Woody Harrelson's documentary,
Kiss the Ground.
Kiss the Ground. I had no idea what tilling was before that. So, I mean, that sort of circular motion, but when you see earth from Donkai, it's pink, orange, because there's a lot of iron. Where we make the hot dyes, their soil is gray. We call it stone. So up north, stone. Down in the sort of river area, it's dune.
Yeah, actually, also like art scene, yeah, many people also started to interested in like using soil or crafts is like coming back because of like we can make, you know, from the soil, and also the like Japanese painting is, of course, rock pigment, to stay in animal glue. It's kind of like a very important like method, even like painting on silk is also the silk is made by insect, right? All the like organic materials like we use, but of course, kind of like a like René mentioned about the nutrition and also the detachment. Kind of like a modernist way of thinking actually separate us to like think that way. Even like a Japanese painting, of course, like now these days, quite like a, authoritarian, like, very traditional conventional, but still, if we change the perspective, kind of like a really the natural pigments, like stayed in animal glue on like silk. It's very interesting like approach to, to draw on like Earth, life on Earth. So maybe that I think kind of like a very important thing is like unlearning, what we obsessed is very important, I think. So Ahmed, also you mentioned about also the ones, you talked about global warming. So then, we can learn from you, you said, Ahmed, are you there?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So then,
Listen.
for like for climate issues, like for the global warming, today you share us with a thought more like a terrestrial perspective. But how do you think about also how you also contribute, from the perspective of Middle East to the global warming, how to get along with heat?
Yeah. I think if I'll do a quick promotion. We have an exhibition coming up at the end of this month on the 29th in Atelier Muji in Ginza, and the exhibition is called New Circulation, and it's about this idea of what rituals exist and how we can explore the regenerative aspect of rituals. So if anyone is around, where it's co-curated with Takahiro, who's the co-curator of Atelier Muji. But if I answer your question about dealing with heat, look, what I'm wearing at the moment is quite unique, but it's also very basic. What it is it's a piece of cloth that, as you walk, has what is or what historically in Japanese architecture is called ma, which is also the distance between body and fabric, and this has been translated in different ways from kimono to miyake to Yusuke now with CFCL, looking at modern technologies in a contemporary sense. And I think we have to learn how to reconnect with our natural environment. I really liked what René had said earlier about everything is about weather. And I think the more we reconnect in that sense with our immediate environment, the more we're able to coexist, and as a consequence of this, lead further. But why do I want to talk about this? The reason why I want to talk about this, which is called the Kandora, is that if you look at a picture of world leaders, G20, and you look at 19 people out of the 20, all of them are more or less wearing a suit, and one person is wearing this, and this is climate change ready. This is ready for heat, and I think not climate change ready. It's ready for heat and increased temperature. And I think I'm not saying something is better or worse. All I'm saying is there are learnings, and I think as a result of this, to answer your question in a very precise manner, we're looking at how this and other aspects of our typology and topography that we can learn from, document, and present in places like Muji, etc. We're working with Yusuke at the moment from CFCL, and he's designing a Kandora just like this. So if you want, you can email them or get in touch with them, and they're making this in a relatively near future. I don't know if that answers the question, but.
Yes, thank you very much. Really interesting, and also that we need to think about the like way we wear, and also that we learn from each other. So time is limited, and we have 10 minutes left, and I would like to pass open a question or comments.
Can I just say one thing that I just
okay,
just one final thing that I was just thinking about when we talk about the soil and nature. And because we're sitting in an art fair, it reminds me of the American artist called Andrea Bauer. And she proposes that all things in nature should have legal rights. And I think that's so radical and fantastic as an idea, that a tree would have legal rights, or a lake. But perhaps that's something as radical as that as we need to start thinking. So
yeah, I learned
artists have good ideas.
Yeah. And also, actually, I learned that Australia has already started kind of like human rights to the nature, and also the naming. Actually, also like unlearning modernistic way. Like Australian government decided to change, or like going back to the name of like indigenous people called the like rivers and hills and everything, and also give them kind of a right. So this is kind of like starts happening in these days in our planet. Yeah, thank you very much for the sharing. So any questions or any comments? As you also, the René said, like related to arts and culture, or like more like a deeper question, how do you do that, or like anything? Yeah.
Sorry, this is a very basic question, but you have very serious practices that deal with, that are very relevant with, like, that are very experimental and very inspiring, but also deal with, tackle issues that are very urgent and much needed in society. And I'm just wondering, like, how you, like, what brings you joy in your work? Like, what makes you so happy in your work? Because I can imagine that even with all the fame and the coolness and the amazingness, the attention that you guys get from, Noma, Philip Wang, Brownbook, and whatever, it's a lot of work. And what drives you and what brings you the most joy?
So I was looking through some pictures this morning, and I remember the picture that really made me happy was a picture with lots of people in the room, and they were all smiling. That's a really basic answer, but that is, I mean, obviously lots of people in the room wearing Philip Wang indigo, yes, but it was a picture of literally everyone, like, with joy.
Oh, I mean, it's, my kids make me happy, but they also make me unhappy. So, and my team makes me very happy, but they also make me unhappy. So I think it comes and goes, and it's kind of everywhere. The most important thing, I think, is that you're surrounded with people you really care for, but they will also make you unhappy. But are you around them and you care for them, then it goes in and out, and I think that's what you can hope for, the best. And I think we've been open 21 years. We have an organization today that's full of those type of people. Sometimes it's amazing, and other times it's like, oh shit, you know. It just is, and surfing that, I find a lot of happiness in surfing that.
Thank you. How about Ahmed?
I think, yeah, I think it's a very important question. I think it's, for me, I think happiness is relevance. It's to make sure that your work continues to have relevance. And I think because of that, you're constantly facing an uphill, I mean, not an uphill, you're constantly facing questions. And I think if I ask myself a good question and I get closer to the answer, and that answer is materialized in a publication, in a research, in a visit, in a trip, it makes me a bit happier. But I echo a lot of the ideas that it's not always, in order for you to have happiness, you must have some suffering. So it's a balancing act.
Thank you. Any comment?
And one of the things that makes me the most happy is walking. It's very simple, but I take very long walks. It's really, really nice.
Yeah, I remember last time we had a meeting in that Zoom. You were walking somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have walked very long walks here in Japan,
Oh.
in the island of Shikoku.
Ah, like Ohenro-san?
Yeah.
Like, okay. Ah, nice.
I did that twice.
Yeah. It's actually, the walking is kind of meditation, isn't it?
It's very slow, and it's the best way of being a tourist. But of course, it's a very slow way of seeing a place. But that's...
Have you ever been to that house, the Alex Kerr house? Have you ever read that book?
No.
Lost by Alex Kerr?
I think famous
has
in
a-
Japan, but not internationally, isn't it?
Yeah, he wrote a book called Lost Japan, and he talks about his house, Chiriori, in Shikoku.
Oh.
It was such an interesting...
Then I haven't read it, no.
I think walks is tremendously important.
But you know, you said walk, but how about the work? The work, is it also the make you happy, or because you know, like arts and culture is always like work is work itself, but at the same time, work is our life itself. Right?
What makes me most happy at work is when I'm actually creating something. If I'm sitting in business meeting, that makes me unhappy. Like for real, when you're actually cooking, that is so nice. Working with your hands makes me much more happy than updating Instagram or something, honestly.
Yeah, I completely agree. You know, I had, you know, I have to attend so many of administrative, you know, the meeting. But even at night, I'm not a chef, but, you know, even at, like after midnight, I start cooking. It's kind of a cooking, like lotus roots kind of foods, like, you know, the preserving food, like, you know, it's like, makes me happy and also like, you know, amazing relaxing. Just meditation.
It is, in a digitalized world, cooking is still analog. You have to do it.
Yeah.
You can't download it.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, thank you. Is it good enough for you? You know, or more?
I think it relates also to everything because a lot of the things that we...
Sorry.
I think a lot of the things that we do that destroys the planet is also because we need to think about, again, like going back to connecting with ourselves and what makes us really deeply happy. We need to kind of redefine that, and I think that's why it's so interesting to like learn from specifically like food and fashion and, you know, this kind of new ways of thinking again about how we eat and how we live and all of these things, because we probably need to give it a chance so that we can think about how we can be happy, you know. And it sounds silly, but I think essentially that's when you think about like we call it SGDs, but what does that really mean, you know?
Yeah. Let me comment. Actually, you know, like I'm working at a university as a professor, but knowledge, you know, it's not actually the driving force kind of engine. Actually, experience. Like food is also, you know, just a monitor looking at, you know, nothing it doesn't mean. So to eating experience or like a wearing experience also, thank you for Chomwan, like dying experience is like walking is experience. I think only experience, I convinced that experience can change this world. Okay, maybe time is up, Keiko, or one more? Okay, yeah, one more question.
はい、今日素晴らしいプレゼンテーションありがとうございます。文化の発展とその果て、最後にあるものについての質問なんですけど、例えば赤い土があったとして、そこには作物があまり育たない。で、
ちょっと待ってくれますか。多分、通訳がうまく聞けてない。
Okay. So thanks for your presentation. And hello, this is Translation Channel. Can you hear me? Yep. Okay, great.
文化の発展についての
So you were talking about the evolution of the civilization, and then you were talking about the red soil that doesn't grow food, and then as you probably do, you just like select more of the better soil, and I think that's part of the evolution of civilization. And as we evolve technology, you know, for example, with the bullet train, we have faster and faster top speed. So, say if there is a new technology that enables even faster trains, then people are not going to be satisfied with that current technology anymore. So as technology evolves and gets better, I think humans will start to feel more stress, or say, if we look at bicycles, for example, or if you think about the origin of humans and the nature, I think that is led to noticing that people are destroying the environment. And man, this is really difficult to understand what he's saying. So I think getting to the origin of I am interpreting this as if you're trying to get to the origin of humans' lifestyle, I think that is going to ultimately lead to solving the SDG issues. Right. Thank you very much. Do we have enough time for this, or should we have one person just answer this? Anyone who has an idea?
Thank you very much for. I think we can learn from history. I think we are archaeologists of our past. I think the closer we get to our nature, I use the example of the pre-internet phone, but we can go pre-electricity, we can go pre-transportation, and more local. And I think there's a lot to learn from the past. And I think you're absolutely right. I mean, this is what you know history says when we're trying to seek truth. I think we're trying to find out about the nature of our existence. Yeah, I think that for me is important as a practitioner.
René, I'm not sure I understood, but I think I have one comment to this. I think that we need to have closing hours on everything, also like social media. like it's open from 8 to 4. Everything should just be open like the stock exchanges. They close for a reason, to not create panic. If we had a little more control of all these things, I think that would be better. But it will never happen, but of course it will be better, I think.
Okay, so closing comment from me. Controlling time is one thing, but I think people knowing that they have an alternative is extremely important. What we do with dyes and stuff is beyond electricity. We don't need electricity. We still go back and we do it, but without Facebook, Instagram, social media, the ladies we work with, they don't just rely on us, they need a livelihood. So I think the future requires an artisanal future which doesn't discriminate against technology either. We just need to find a way where people know that they have a choice and they can integrate it, as opposed to saying, I want to live just in the countryside, I want to live just in the city. I think choice is important. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. ちょっと日本語でじゃあ
All right, so going back to Japanese again, I'm going to do the closing remarks. Today, we were able to have great, interesting discussions with the front runner of each of your different areas. And then we talked about the I-shokuju, the 3 elements, which are the clothings, housings, and food, right? So I was able to touch on those 3 elements, which was a great thing. And in this ACK, Art Communication Kyoto, this is going to be, or Art Collaboration Kyoto, this is connected to, it means, I think it's connected to how we live as humans. So thank you very much for all your information, and big round of applause to the panelists.
では本日この後とまた明日も引き続きさまざまなトークを開催いたします。またこちらのトークはオンラインでも配信とアーカイブがされますのでどうぞお楽しみください。では改めてありがとうございました。